You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 13th of July. John Terry found not guilty of racist remark. Buster sniffs out illegals. M4 Olympic disaster waiting to happen. Euronews and the belly of the beast with Nick Griffin, MEP. Yet another Syrian massacre, boring. 3 Brits killed in Alps are named. Thought for the day, Mrs Walker in trouble yet again. Finally, kitten escapes from China by fleeing on a boat. UK news. John Terry found not guilty of racist remark. There were cheers in a packed courtroom as the Chief Magistrate, Howard Riddle, read out his verdict. Anton Ferdinand was not in court to hear the verdict because he is in Malaysia for a pre-season training. Terry, who was accused of a racially aggravated public order offence, had strenuously denied he is a racist. He had told the court that he, Terry, was repeating what Anton Ferdinand had incorrectly accused him of saying. Apparently he called Ferdinand a black bleep. The lip and sign reader, Susan Whitewood, concurred the language had been used. A World at 8 writer stated, "Compared to what we Brits are subjected to in our own country and never allowed to comment, let alone sue anyone, this verdict is correct. Ferdinand is black and should not be ashamed of it. As to whether he is a bleep or not, this court action rather points the way on that one." Home Office reports on the 2nd of July reveal a sniffer dog named Buster has sniffed out 6 illegal immigrants in Calais bound for the good old UK and the historic town of Banbury. Buster, a black and white border collie, sniffs for the border agency, who has staff in France, ready to stop illegals that come through Europe. Buster found 2 Iranians and 4 Iraqis in the back of the lorry being driven by a Pole and full of motor parts, and alerted the agency at Calais. The dog received a nice treat and will get a pat on the head from all nationalists in Britain. A World at 8 reporter commented, "We need more dogs like Buster, only over here as well, only about 1 million to go then." The roadworks on the M4 motorway that have caused mayhem recently have been completed. The M4 was closed due to a bridge being out of action because cracks had been found on the structure. As the M4 will be of high importance during the Olympic fiasco, the work was undertaken without hesitation, but there are fears of it being too speedy a repair because of the opening date of the Games. Here is the Euronews from the belly of the beast. I give you Nick Griffin, MEP.
Being in Brussels and not having a television, I've not been able to watch the dramatic footage of the Asturian miners in open revolt against the crucifixion of the Spanish people on the tarnished fool's gold of the euro. Perhaps you've seen it and have tended to write them off as a bunch of excitable foreigners, doing the sort of things that excitable foreigners do. Welcome change, perhaps, from the media obsession with racism and what one overpaid footballer may or may not have said to another foul-mouthed moron. Welcome change it may be, but it's still only a sign of things to come. In fact, if I was a betting man, I'd say that, were it not for the seemingly endless rain — it's played havoc with my run of beans, by the way — we'd already be in the grip of some equally dramatic mayhem on our own streets, although without any good reason, save the folly of decades of Liberal politicians. But, thanks to the rain, Britain's police forces have had a bit of extra time to stock up on plastic bullets and the other riot control gadgets that their idiot PC bosses think can make up for 20% cuts in the thin blue line. No such respite for the authorities in Spain, which now stands on the brink of genuine chaos. Just before the last big supposed emergency summit to save the euro, I said on World at 8 that it would end with headlines of success, supposed agreement on a bailout, and a short rally in confidence, which would evaporate as all the suckers realise that nothing's changed and that the German cavalry are still sitting in their barracks, counting their money. Well, it emerged just yesterday that the German Supreme Court is unlikely to reach a decision on the legality or otherwise of the latest woefully inadequate bailout proposals for at least 3 months. So while one part of the German elite is hell-bent on using the crisis the Europhiles created as the excuse to push on to create a federal superstate, an equally influential group of their compatriots are providing the only serious effective block to the scheme, other than the incoherent rage of the masses betrayed. Who will prevail, we'll find out in due course, but I'll tell you this, free, gratis and for nothing, Spain does not have 3 months. The euro does not have 3 months. Trust no bank, their whole system is now on a knife edge. When the vultures finally come home to roost, all this stuff is going to produce some thoroughly entertaining conspiracy theories. At least they'll give us something to laugh about in the economic and social disaster coming down the tracks. But while the origins of this crisis undoubtedly do lie in the Europhile conspiracy to destroy the free nation states of Europe, I'm inclined to think that the sheer scale of the crisis now means that the key drivers of the whole sorry affair from now on are cock-ups rather than conspiracies. The juggernaut is still heading over the edge, but rather than it being deliberate, the truth is that no one is in control at all. Talking of conspiracies, there's one factor in modern political life that would fit the bill perfectly, if the whole thing wasn't so blatant that the murky concealed undertones that go with the word conspiracy really don't apply. I'm talking about the neocon stroke Ultra-Zionist funding and organisation of the counter-jihad movement, including the English Defence League. Please note that, contrary to what the increasingly geriatric cartoon character Jerry Gable will no doubt tell anyone who might listen, I am not using those words, neocon or ultra-Zionist, as code word for the Jews. Many of those involved are not Jews at all, while many Jews are staunchly opposed to what is being done by a clique of extremists who, despite their messianic fantasies, speak and act only for themselves. As you may already know, the British National Party was warning of the dangers of mass immigration and Islamisation, while most of this crew were still Trotskyites, employing Frankfurt School techniques to undermine the West. But while we're pleased they've finally woken up to the Islamic threat, we most definitely do not share their foreign policy objectives. Quite simply, they want our blood and our money by the bucket load to fight their wars, while we would keep out of them and use our treasure and our brave armed forces to fight only for Britain and for British interests. While we and they sound very similar when we talk about Islam, even there we're motivated by very different considerations. We are here to fight for our land, our people, our freedoms, our traditions. When they attack Islam, the people behind the so-called counter-jihad movement are not concerned with defending the traditional identity of the nations in Europe. Indeed, most of them are still promoting multi-racialism and genocidal integration policies at every possible opportunity. They're only worried about Islam, which we see is only a part of the problem. They're no friends of ours, or of our vision of a well-ordered, traditionally based world of independent nation-states. What they want is chaos, because chaos would help them stampede the herd to fight their wars. That is why the self-same people who claim to be so concerned about the threat of radical Islam are also behind the push to hand Syria over on a plate to the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the ones beating the propaganda drums for Western meddling and regime change in Syria. So much so that not having to abuse the television every night is another big plus of not having one. I don't think I can stand any more of the BBC or Sky with their sickening hypocrisy and deceit served up in a nightly diet of fictional atrocities. It reminds me of another hate campaign, the one against the Serbians back in 1999. You probably remember all the shock reports about the plight of the poor defenceless Albanian Muslim immigrants in the Kosovan heartland of Serbia. There were massacres, concentration camps and ethnic cleansing on TV every night. The US State Department estimated that 500,000 had already died, and we were told that the only way to stop genocide was to bomb Serbia to rubble and invade the ruins. But you probably won't remember, because the controlled media didn't tell you, that the United Nations later revealed the real death toll on all sides of the conflict was not 500,000, as we were told, but a mere 11,000. Just as in Iraq, with the dodgy dossiers and non-existent weapons of mass destruction, we were lied into forcing Serbia to hand over Kosovo to a gang of corrupt Muslim cutthroats by the usual suspects and their Westminster puppets. Take a moment now to think about the propaganda against Syria. Isn't it odd that so many of the supposed corpses of Assad's alleged victims don't bleed onto their dramatic white shrouds? A simple Google search will throw up examples of phony war crimes. The one of students covering each other with tomato ketchup and playing dead for gullible Western journalists is my favourite. Of course there are real killings. There's a civil war going on. Various minorities in Syria are waging a desperate life-or-death struggle against the monstrous cruelty of Islamist fanatics who are backed by the governments of the USA, the UK and Sunni regimes such as Saudi Arabia, who are pouring in arms, know-how and money in a bid to turn Syria into a basket case on the Libyan model. Our society is in the grip of a series of interlocking cartels of criminals. Banksters, war criminals, big oil, PFI corporations, and the American military-industrial complex. Don't jump to conclusions, or let opponents put words in my mouth. There is no monolithic conspiracy. Often they're almost as busy trying to rip each other off as they are to loot us. But they will always close ranks in the face of any sign of us peasants waking up, let alone fighting back. And in every country their hired hands and whores, the mainstream politicians, the press barons, and the bought and paid for journalists, spew out a ceaseless stream of lies and diversions to conceal their masters' crimes. Boom or bust, peace or war, the criminal elites cheat and loot and gouge, while we pay the price. We pay. The ordinary people, the ones whose sweat and brains produce the real wealth, the ones who struggle every day to bring up decent kids, the ones they demand hand over our money for their pockets, and our children for their wars. It was all summed up so well by G.K. Chesterton in his great poem, The Secret People. It'll take you about 10 seconds to find it on the internet, but a bit longer to read it and digest its message. But it's well worth doing, for Chesterton's understanding of these new unhappy lords is even more accurate today than when he wrote it way back in 1907. We hear men speaking for us, of new laws, strong and sweet. Yet is there no man speaketh, as we speak in the street. But we are the people of England, and we have not spoken yet. Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget. As I'm recording this on the 12th of July, I must point out that when Chesterton speaks of England, we nationalists move in both our heads and our hearts to include not only the people of Ulster, but also our brothers and sisters in Wales, Scotland and Ireland. And even though he died way back in 1936, the amazing thing is that G.K. Chesterton continues to excite and inspire practical idealists today, far beyond the bounds of the England that he so loved. Just last week in Warsaw, I was speaking with a group of young Polish nationalists, the main players in a nationalist unity initiative that last November the 11th roused 20,000 patriots for a fantastic demonstration on their Independence Day. They asked me earnestly if the British National Party's economic policies in favour of well-distributed private property in the means of production were influenced by distributism, the way ahead of its time political philosophy founded by G.K. and his great friend Hilaire Belloc. I was able not only to tell them that it is, but also that I wrote the pamphlet that introduced distributism to people in Eastern Europe even as the dust settled on the ruins of the Soviet tyranny over 20 years ago. Tell you what, I'll get it put up on a website again, so you can have a read too. I do not claim to be original in it, for the gentle genius in it is all the work of Chesterton and Belloc, and I was merely summarising their wisdom for a new generation. I'm very pleased that our efforts are still circulating and influencing people in Eastern Europe as well as in the West, because looking at the tragedies and horrors unleashed by men who plot and scheme to remake the entire world, there's never been a better time for the ideas and common sense of men who only urge us to repair and renew parts of our own native land.
World News. What is being described as a massacre in Syria has left around 200 dead in Trensa. Tanks and helicopters have been used by President Assad to stop his government being attacked by rebel forces. Kofi Annan has joined in with the anti-Assad protests in the UN by saying the use of tanks and helicopters was against their peace plan. One Syrian said, "What does Kofi Annan want us to do? Fight the rebels with one hand tied behind our backs while they shoot at us?" A World Date writer added, "Yes, that is exactly what Annan wants you to do, fail and fail miserably, so the fundamentalists can take over your country and the united morons can claim a victory for them." 3 of the British climbers that were killed in an avalanche in the French Alps have been named. 2 were named as John Taylor and Stephen Barber. The pair were from West Yorkshire and were climbing to raise money for their local hospice. A 3rd Briton killed has already been named as experienced climber Robert Payne, who was working in the Alps as a guide. 4 climbers are still missing, 2 of them British and 2 Germans. Efforts to locate them were called off late on Thursday. Thought for the day. This thought is very short today, but very necessary. I'm wearing my Profam hat and was appalled to learn today that Mrs Margaret Walker of Fareham, her of the leaflet fame and previous court hearing in which she was sentenced with an interim ASBO, has been arrested yet again. This morning the police arrived at her home and told her that she had sent yet another leaflet to a local Fareham councillor who was obviously terribly upset. In fact, so upset he could barely make it to the police station to complain. No, I am joking on that one, my friends. It was during the first hearing that I attended with Margaret that the CPS solicitor, he of the weird appearance and very bad suit, asked the magistrate what happens if more of these terrible leaflets appear during and up to the time of the next hearing, which is on the 20th of July. The magistrate asked Margaret Walker if she had done any more of them and sent them. She said on oath that since the police had approached her and cautioned her some weeks ago, she had neither written nor sent any homemade leaflets. The magistrate accepted that, but commented that there could be some floating around in the postal system, which could be ignored and would not count against her ASBO. So there we have it. Apparently one has made it through, whether by intention or deliberate by a person unknown to this particular councillor. I have asked our Hampshire SRO to get a look at the envelope and the post date and origins to ascertain exactly who and where it came from. At the time of recording I have received no news of what has transpired in Fareham today, but rest assured I will let you and World Today know as soon as I know. And finally, a small kitten has survived a massive sea voyage of over 6,500 miles. The kitten travelled from China to the United States without food or water, it was claimed. The orange and white kitty was rescued by the Los Angeles Animal Rescue Services and is now in quarantine. Kitty will be found a new home in the United States in the next few months when he or she is returned to full health. This presenter says, poor little thing, obviously a terrible sea trip is easier than being eaten in China or taken for fur. I hope this little scrap is given a really good home and lots of love. I wish all the persecuted and hunted animals in China, both domestic and wild, could be rescued. You have been listening to The World at 8. Don't forget we have our Reverend West on this Sunday. I am Lynn Mozart and I and the team at Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.